Hi everyone, this is The Great Crisis of Frederick II. It's a game by Tetsuya Nakamura. It is a game about 7-Year War, 1756 to 1763. Complexity 3 out of 10, solitaire, suitability 8. Gameplay time is 5 to 8 hours and is a 2-player game, but like I said, very suitable for solitaire. It is published by Vuca Simulations. Straight off the bat, I played this game about half a dozen times. I played it exclusively solitaire because we're all at home doing that. And the key thing I would say about this game when you open it is the production quality is absolutely fantastic. The quality of the components is amazing. The mounted board is absolutely stunning. The counters pop very easily from their cardboard. The cards that come with the game, the graphic design is brilliant. The quality of every single component of this game is outstanding and is definitely in the top category of produced war games. The rulebook is, again, graphic design is very high quality. Pages are beautifully laid out, lots of examples of play. Incredibly well written, well edited. I skim read the rules and then went through them in detail. That's the setup information, for example. There are some great examples of play of the mechanics, which is predominantly marching and performing battles. Number of pages for the rules. I think the rule book comes in at around 15 pages. However, a lot of that is the examples and the setup and the cover. So I'm going to say 7 or 8 pages of rules, to be honest with you. In terms of just the sheer production, this is an outstanding game. So, how does it play? What we have here is the board. This is the core map. It's a point-to-point war game. You have a border framing which has how the activation chits work, how the resources work, how the action points work, the reserves, and then the core game itself. Let's just talk a little bit about some of the key mechanics of the game. I'm not going to go into every detail of every single mechanic of this game, and I'll kind of come to that in my conclusion. It's a chit pull game. There are different nations in play. You've got the Prussians, top right, the Russians, which come on later in the game and then they switch sides. You've got the French, the British and the Hanoverians. You've got the Austrians, Saxony here in the middle, which in the games I've played tend to have a hard time of it. And then a few others, for example, Sweden and the Holy Roman Empire. The game is orientated around fighting for resources. So, for example, Leipzig and Dresden, these are resource forts. They have a sort of a specific graphic compared to a normal fort. That's a normal fort. That's a resource fort. That's what you're going to be fighting for. There is a fort, a resource city with Berlin, but the rest of the cities are not resource points. The more resource points you get, the better. How the mechanics work actually when it's your turn, once you've pulled a chit, so for example here we go, Austrian chit's pulled, you roll dice to determine how many action points you use those action points to march and to if you've had casualties you can sort of flip the counters back over from the casualty side to their non-casualty side, which is really important. You're going to be doing a lot of that. In terms of the stacking, you can either have large stacks. So for example here in the French, this is the setup. I've got 8 counters all nicely stacked up there. Or what you can do is you can use counters that have a number on them. So for example 6, that represents 6 units. So instead of having 6 units stacked up, you just use one of those. And you get plenty of those, which is great. There is another way you can have these placeholder boxes. You put your units in there, you put the number 1 counter from there on there. So incredibly user-friendly when it comes to stacking. I don't mind games with stacking, but this game can be large stacks of armies moving around, and that thought to the user experience is I'm very grateful of and really helped streamline the game. in terms of when we talk about streamlining, all the mechanics are streamlined in this game. Combat, very straightforward. Two types of battles: field battles and battles for taking over the different forts, so siege battles effectively. They're very simple. I'm not going to go into every single mechanic of them. You roll dice basically for the number of unit counters you have. You need a 6. They can be enhanced, your units, by your commanders. They can enhance the number of units specific to each commander and how much they're enhanced by. And it's just very, very streamlined. The one thing that's worth pointing out: a field battle will take a number of rounds, and you basically keep playing until it's won or lost. So one side's destroyed or surrenders. A siege will take a number of turns. So here on the turn track, if you're starting in 1756, with each turn being a month, a siege will take over several months. A field battle won't. It's very straightforward. They're the core mechanics of the game: moving, battles, taking over resources. Another couple of components or mechanics that's worth talking about: cards. Each side have their own deck of cards. You can see, just about to see that deck over there. The cards add a flavour, add extra mechanics to the game, extra sort of options for each leader, being the player, and they can have quite a dramatic effect. Even when playing solitaire, I still use the cards. I can imagine playing 2-player, they'd have even larger impact because of the nature of card playing in 2-player games. Like I said, because of what's going on in the world, we're completely at home, obviously. And I've been playing this game completely solitaire. But the cards add a huge amount of variety and chrome to the game as well. And unlike some games, I felt these had a big impact as well. So definitely, added a really key component and ingredient to the game mechanics. So, in summary, keeping this video nice and short and snappy, what I liked about this game: components are amazing. Absolutely stunning. This is a rich period of important European history. There aren't a huge amount of games for this period compared to, say, Napoleonics. So I enjoyed that. It enabled me to dust off a few books from my library and re-familiarise myself with some of the goings-ons during this period of history, which was great. It is a big game in terms of the time investment from a player. I've played it around half a dozen times. The back of the box is saying 5 to 8 hours. I completely agree with that. It is a serious time investment game. All the mechanics are very streamlined. This is not a game where you're going to have to be looking in the rulebook every few minutes, and there's all these layers of texture and chrome for the combat. It just isn't that. Once you've done a march, for example, and you've done a round of combat, you'll be away with the mechanics. What this is instead is a game that takes over a long period of time in the gameplay. It's a number of months and years. You go through these winter phases where there's all kinds of especially if there's a siege going on through the winter, you don't want to be doing that, right? It's super interesting, super compelling, but it's that sheer scale of time through Europe. When I played this the last time, for example, the Prussians made good headway. The poor old Saxony got a right hammer in here. The Austrians weren't able to do much, and then several turns later, the French came in. They had a good old ruckus with the British and Hanoverians here. There was this great seesawing here. The Austrians were able to take some of the resources points back from the Prussians, and it just created this really exciting narrative, but in a European scale that's played over a large number of turns, and it's got this unpredictability because it's a chip ball system, because obviously it's dice in the combat. It just added a really strong, rich tapestry of narrative for this European conflict, and I absolutely loved that. This is not a game about this counter is particularly good at this infantry, or this counters a particular type of cavalry. No, it's not like that at all. This game is about the scale. And it's about the scale of time. It's about maneuvering your armies, about taking those resource points. And that's effectively how you're going to win, by taking enough resource points, controlling those resources and hanging on to them over a large number of months, and even in cases years, to do that. And I absolutely loved that. Streamlined mechanics, every single mechanic in here. There's no unneeded fluff or steps. Everything's been super streamlined. Now, I never played the original game, and I do understand it's based on an original game, but this is just such a streamlined from a mechanics point of view, but the scale is enormous and absolutely delightful to experience and play through with that rich narrative. That, combined with the fact it's a fairly, it's a super interesting period of history, but like I said, it isn't. I haven't got dozens of games about this period of history, whereas I do have, for example, Napoleonics. So that was refreshing and interesting, and components incredible. It's a beautiful game, incredibly well written. I found the rules incredibly straightforward. I think once I played through, 2 turns, I just never referred to the rulebook. I don't ever remember referring to the rulebook again. So in that terms, it means you can play the game experience, play that narrative over this historic period of European history, and take your time. It's not a game you kind of feel you need to rush through in an evening. Playing it solitaire, I played it in several sittings, probably a couple of hours at a time, and enjoyed that very much. And when I came back to the game, having not played it for a day, it was, you can get straight back into it instantly because of the streamlined mechanics. An absolute joy to play because of the quality of components, incredibly high. So, yeah, big thumbs up for me. I loved their previous game, Aachen 1944, which is a World War II game, for very much similar reasons, actually, although that game's a lot more complex. These guys and people at this company have proven that high quality components here, well thought through rules, well written, incredibly rich in flavour of the historic period, but with brilliantly streamlined mechanics. Highly recommended. If you, maybe when the world gets back to normal, whenever that will be, in whatever form that will be, if you do have an opponent who is interested in this period of history, I think this will be a fantastic 2-player game for people who are prepared to put that time investment in. Maybe meet up. I can imagine playing this game 6 months ago, for example, meeting with a friend every week or every couple of weeks, leaving it set out and playing another hour of this, and that would be an incredible experience. But at the moment, playing it solitaire, highly recommended. I loved playing this solitaire, and it's for those reasons. Straightforward mechanics, streamlined, brilliant narrative, high quality components, and just this epic scale of this historic and rich period of European history. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you.